Welcome back. Berg Onund, son of Thorgir Thornfoot, had married Björn the landowner's daughter Gunhild, and she was living with him at Usk. Asgard, now Thorolf Skallagrimsson's widow, was staying with her kinsman Arnbjorn. She and Thorolf had a young daughter named Thordis, who was with her mother. Egil told Asgard of Thorolf's death and offered to provide for her. Asgard was very upset at the news, but she answered Egil fittingly and played the matter down. As autumn progressed, Egil grew very melancholy and would often sit down with his head bowed into his cloak. Once Arnbjorn went to him and asked what was causing his melancholy. "Even though you have suffered a great loss with your brother's death, the manly thing to do is to bear it well. One man lives after another's death. What poetry have you been composing? Let me hear some." Egil told him this was his most recent verse. "The goddess of the arm where hawks perch, woman must suffer my rudeness. When young I would easily dare to lift the sheer cliffs of my brow. Now I must conceal in my cloak the outcrop between my brows. When she enters the poet's mind, headdress of the rock giant's earth." Arnbjorn asked who this woman was that he was making love poems about. There seems to be a clue about her name concealed in the verse. Then Egil spoke this verse. "I seldom hide the name of my female relative in the drink of the giant's kin. Sorrow wanes in Seafire's fortress. Some who stir the din of Valkyrie's armor have poetic fingers that feel the essence of the war god's wine." "This is a case where the saying applies that you can tell anything to a friend," said Egil. "I will answer your question who the woman is that I make poems about. It is your kinswoman Asgard, and I would like your support in arranging this marriage." Arnbjorn said he thought this was a fine idea, and I was certainly put in a word to bring the match about. Afterwards Egil put his proposal to Asgard, but she referred it to the advice of her father and her kinsman Arnbjorn. Then Arnbjorn discussed it with Asgard, and she gave the same answer as before. Arnbjorn urged her to accept the offer of marriage. After that, Arnbjorn and Egil went to see Bjorn, and Egil made a proposal to marry his daughter. Bjorn responded favorably, saying that it was up to Arnbjorn to decide. Arnbjorn favored it strongly, so in the end they became betrothed, and their wedding was arranged to be held at Arnbjorn's house. When the appointed time came, a lavish feast was held there, and Egil took her for his wife. He remained in good spirits for the rest of the winter. In the spring, Egil equipped a merchant ship to sail to Iceland. Arnbjorn had advised him not to stay in Norway while Queen Gunhild held such power. "She is very ill disposed towards you," Arnbjorn said, "and it made things much worse when you ran into Eyvind off Jutland." When Egil was ready and a favourable wind got up, he sailed out to sea and had an easy passage. He reached Iceland in the autumn and headed for Borgarfjord. He had been away for 12 years. Skallagrim was growing very old by then and was delighted when Egil returned. Egil went to stay at Borg, taking with him Thorfinn the Strong and many of his men. They spent the winter with Skallagrim. Egil had an enormous amount of wealth, but it is not mentioned whether he ever shared the silver that King Athelstan had presented to him, either with Skallagrim or anyone else. That winter, Thorfinn married Skallagrim's daughter Son, and the following spring Skallagrim gave them a place to live at Langarfoss, and the land stretched inshore from the Lake brook between the Langa and Alfta rivers, all the way up to the mountains. Thorfinn and Son had a daughter named Thordis, who married Angar from Holm, the son of Bersi the godless. Their son was Björn, champion of the Hitterdal people. Egil stayed with Skallagrim for several winters, and looked after the property and ran the farm just as much as Skallagrim did. Egil went balder than ever. Then the district began to settle in many places. Romund, brother of Grim the Helgelander, was living at the Verarhild with the crew of a ship. Romund was the father of Gunnlaug, whose daughter Thurid Daila was the mother of Illugi the Black. One summer, when Egil had been at Borg for many years, a ship arrived in Iceland from Norway, bringing the news that Bjorn the landowner was dead. It was also reported that Bjorn's son-in-law Bergonund had taken all his wealth. He had taken all the valuables to his own home and had put tenants on the farms and was collecting rent from them. He had also seized all the lands that Bjorn had owned. When Egil learned of this, he asked in detail whether Berg Onund would have done this on his own initiative or with the backing of a more powerful people. He was told that Onund was a good friend of King Eirik, and even closer to Queen Gunhild. Egil let the matter rest for the autumn, but at the end of winter and early spring, Egil had the ship brought out that he owned and that had been standing in the shed at Langarfoss, equipped it to go to sea, and gathered a crew. His wife Asgard went on the journey, but Thorolf's daughter Thordis stayed behind. Egil put out to sea when he was ready, and nothing of note happened until he reached Norway. He went straight to see Arnbjorn at the first opportunity. Arnbjorn welcomed Egil and invited him to stay, which he accepted. Asgard went there with him, along with several people. Egil soon brought up the subject with Arnbjorn of collecting the property he laid claims to in that country. "It does not look too promising," Arnbjorn said. "Berg Onund is tough and troublesome, unfair and greedy, and now the king and queen are giving him much support. As you are aware, Gunhild is your greatest enemy, and she will not urge Onund to settle up." Egil said, "The king will allow me to win my lawful rights in this case, and with your support I won't hesitate about taking Onund to law." They decided that Egil should equip a boat, which he manned with a crew of almost 20. They headed south for Hordaland, landed at Ask, and went to the house to ask for Berg Onund. Egil presented his case and demanded his share of Bjorn's inheritance from Onund, saying that both daughters had equal rights to inherit from Bjorn by law. "Even if it seems to me that Asgard might be considered of much higher birth than your wife Gunhild," he added. "You've certainly got some nerve, Egil," Onund snapped back. "You've been outlawed by King Eirik, then you come back here to this country to pester his men. You can be sure that I have got the better of plenty of people like you, Egil, even when I have considered there to be much less reason than you with your claim on an inheritance for your wife, because everyone knows she is the daughter of a slave woman." Onund delivered a long string of abuse. When Egil saw that Onund was not prepared to make any settlement, he summoned him to appear at an assembly and to be judged according to the laws of the Gula assembly. Onund said, "I'll be at the Gula assembly, and if I have my way, you won't be leaving there in one piece." Egil said he would risk going to the assembly whatever happened, come what may of our dealings. Egil and his men went away, and when he returned home he told Arnbjorn about his journey and Onund's answers. Arnbjorn was furious at hearing his aunt Thora called a slave woman. Arnbjorn went to see King Eirik and put the matter to him. The king took the matter quite badly, saying that Arnbjorn had taken Egil's side for a long time. "It is for your sake that I have allowed him to stay in this country, but that will prove more difficult if you support him whenever he encroaches on my friends," Arnbjorn said. "You should allow us to claim our rights in this case." The king was stubborn about the whole business, but Arnbjorn could tell that the queen was even more adverse to it. Arnbjorn went back and said the outlook was quite bleak. Winter passed, and the time came round to attend the Gula assembly. Arnbjorn took a large band of men with him, and Egil was among them. King Eirik was there too, and had a large band with him. Berg Onund and his brothers were in the king's party and had many men with them. When the time came to discuss the cases, both sides went to the place where the court was held, to present their testimonies. Onund was bragging. The court was held on a flat plain, marked out by hazel poles with a rope around them. This was known as staking out a sanctuary. Inside the circle sat the court, 12 men from the Fjordane province, 12 from Sognafjord province, and 12 from Hordaland province. These 36 men were to rule on all the cases. Arnbjorn selected the members of the Fjordane court, and Thord from Ireland those from Sognafjord, and they were all on the same side. Arnbjorn had taken a large band of men to the assembly, a fully manned fast vessel and many small boats, skiffs and ferries owned by farmers. King Eirik had a large party there too, 6 or 7 longships and many farmers. Egil began his statement by demanding that the court rule in his favour against Onund. He recounted his grounds for claiming Bjorn and Brynwulf's son's inheritance. He said that his wife, Asgard, deserved to inherit from her father Bjorn, being descended entirely from landowners and ultimately of royal stock. He demanded that the court rule that Asgard should inherit half of Bjorn's estate, both money and land. When Egil finished his speech, Berg Onund spoke. My wife Gunhild is the daughter of Bjorn and Olaf, Bjorn's lawful wife, he said. Gunhild is therefore Bjorn's legal heiress. I claimed ownership of everything Bjorn owned on the grounds that Bjorn had only one other daughter, and she had no right to the inheritance. Her mother was captured and made a concubine without her kinsman's approval, and taken from one country to another. And you, Egil, want to act as unreasonably and overbearingly here as you do everywhere else you go. But you do not stand to gain by it this time, for King Eirik and Queen Gunhild have promised me that every case of mine in their realm will be ruled in my favor. I present irrefutable evidence to the king and queen and members of the court to prove that Thora of the embroidered hand, Asgard's mother, was captured from her brother Thor's home, and on another occasion from Brynwolf's in Ireland. She travelled from one country to the next with Bjorn and some Vikings and outlaws who had been exiled by the king, and while she was away she became pregnant with Asgard by Bjorn. It is astonishing that you, Egil, intend to ignore all King Eirik's rulings. For a start, you are here in this country after Eirik outlawed you, and what is more, even though you have married a slave woman, you claim she has a right to an inheritance. I demand of the members of the court that they award me of all Bjorn's inheritance, and declare Asgard a king's slave woman, because she was begotten when her mother and father were under king's outlawry. Then Arnbjorn spoke. We will bring forth witnesses who will swear on oath that my father Thordir and Bjorn stated in their settlement that Asgard, Bjorn and Thor's daughter, was deemed one of her father's heiresses, and also that you, king, granted him the right to live in this country as you know for yourself, and that everything was settled that had once prevented them from reaching an agreement. The king took a long time answering his speech. Then Egil spoke a verse. This man, pinned with thorns, claimed that my wife, who bears my drinking horn, is born of a slave woman. Selfish Onund looks after himself. Spear-wielder, my brooch goddess, is born to an inheritance. This can be sworn to, descendant of ancient kings, except an oath. Arnbjorn then had 12 worthy men testify that they had heard the terms of Thordir and Bjorn's settlement, and they all offered to swear an oath on it for the king and the court. The court wanted to take their oaths if the king did not forbid it. The king replied that he would neither order it nor forbid it. Then Queen Gunhild spoke. How peculiar of you, king, to let this big man Egil run circles around you. Would you even raise an objection if he claimed the throne out of your hands? You might refuse to make any ruling in Onund's favor, but I will not tolerate Egil trampling over our friends and wrongly taking this money from Onund. Where are you now, Alf Askman? Take your men to where the court is sitting and prevent this injustice from coming to pass. Askman and his men ran to the court and cut the ropes where the sanctuary had been staked out, broke the hazel poles, and drove the court away. Commotion broke out at the assembly. No one carried arms there. Then Egil said, Can Berg Onund hear me? I'm listening, he replied. I challenge you to a duel, here, at the assembly. The victor will take all the property, the lands, and the valuables, and you will be a figure of public scorn if you do not dare. Then King Eirik said, If you're looking for a fight, Egil, we can arrange one for you. Egil answered, I'm not prepared to fight the king's forces and be outnumbered, but I will not run away if I'm granted a fight on equal terms. I will give you all the same treatment. Then Arnbjorn said, Let's leave, Egil. We've no business here for the time being. Arnbjorn went away, taking all his men with him. Egil turned around and said in a loud voice, Testify to this, Arnbjorn. Thord and all who hear me now, landholders and men of law and common people, that I forbid that the lands once owned by Bjorn Brynwolf's son will be lived on, worked on, and used for any purpose. This I forbid you, Berg Onund, and all other men, foreign or native, of high or low birth, and anyone who does so I pronounce to have broken the laws of the land, incurred the wrath of the gods, and violated the peace. After that, Egil went with Arnbjorn. They went to their ships, crossing a hill some distance away, which prevented them from being seen in the assembly place. When they reached the ships, Arinbjorn addressed his men. You are all aware of how this assembly turned out. We failed to win our rights, and the king is so furious that I expect him to deal out the harshest treatment to our men if he has a chance. I want everyone to board his ship and go home immediately. Let no man wait for any other. Then Arinbjorn boarded his ship and said to Egil, You board the boat that is tied to the seaward side of the longship and get away as quickly as possible. Travel by night if you can, not by day, and lie low, because the king will try to find a way to make your paths cross. Whatever may happen, come to me when all of this is over. Egil did as Arinbjorn had told him. 30 of them boarded the boat and rowed as fast as they could. It was an exceptionally fast craft. A large number of Arinbjorn's men rowed out of the harbour in boats and ferries, and a longship commanded by Arinbjorn went last, being the hardest to row. The boat that Egil was in soon went ahead of the others. Then Egil spoke a verse. Thornfoot's false heir ruined, my claim to the inheritance. From him I earn only threats and hectoring. Whenever I may repay his robbing, my lands or oxen toil. We disputed great fields that serpents slumber on. Gold. King Eirik had heard Egil's departing words to the assembly and was furious. But since everyone had gone to the assembly unarmed, he did not attack him there. He ordered his men to board their ships, and they did so. When they reached the shore, the king arranged a meeting to describe his plan. We will take down the awnings from our ships and row after Arinbjorn and Egil. Then we will execute Egil and spare no one who takes his side. They boarded their ships, quickly made ready to put to sea, and rowed to where Arinbjorn's ships had been moored. But they had already left by then. The king ordered his men to row after them through the northern part of the sound, when he entered Saga fjord. Arinbjorn's men were rowing into Saudungssund Sound. He pursued them and caught up with Arinbjorn's ships in the south. Drawing up beside them, they called out, and the king asked if Egil was on board. Arinbjorn replied, Egil is not here, as you will soon find out for yourself, my lord. The men on board are all known to you, and you won't find Egil below deck if you look there. The king asked Arinbjorn about Egil's most recent whereabouts. He replied that Egil was on board a boat with 30 men rowing out to Steinsund. Then the king ordered his men to row along the channels that were farthest inland and try to cut Egil off. They did so. There is a man from Uppland called Ketil the Slayer, a member of King Eirik's court. He navigated and steered the king's ships. Ketil was a big, handsome man and relative of the king's. Many people said there is a close resemblance between them. Egil had left his ship afloat and moved the cargo before he went to the assembly. After leaving Arinbjorn, he and his men rowed to Steinsund to their ship and boarded it. The boat was left afloat between ship and shore, with its rudder ready and the oars tied in place with the rowlocks. The following morning, when day had scarcely broken, the guards noticed several ships rowing up to them. And when Egil woke up, he got straight to his feet and ordered all his men to board the boat. He armed himself quickly, and so did all the others. Egil took the chests of silver that he had been given by King Athelstan and took with him everywhere. They boarded the boat and rowed on the shore side of the warship closest to land. It was King Eirik's. Because all this happened so quickly, and there was still little daylight, the ships sailed past each other. When they stood aft to aft, Egil threw a spear, striking the helmsman, Ketil the Slayer, through the middle. King Eirik called out an order to his men to row after Egil. When the ships passed the merchant vessel, the king's men boarded it. All of Egil's men who had stayed behind there and not boarded the boat were killed. If the king's men caught them, some fled to land. 10 of Egil's men died there. Some of the ships rowed after Egil, and others plundered the merchant vessel. They took all the valuables they found on board, then burned it. The party pursuing Egil rowed vigorously with 2 men on each oar. They had plenty of men on board, while Egil had a small crew of 18 men on his boat. The king's men began to catch up with them. Inland from the island was a fairly shallow fording point to another island. It was low tide. Egil and his men headed for the shallow channel, and the warships ran aground there and lost sight of them. Then the king turned back to the south, while Egil headed north to see Arinbjorn. He spoke a verse. The mighty wielder of swords that flame in battle has felled 10 of our men, but I acquitted myself when the stout branch wetted with the war goddess's wound sea, dispatched by my hand, flew straight between Ketil's curved ribs. Egil went to see Arnbjorn and told him the news. Arnbjorn replied that Egil could not have expected anything else from his dealings with King Eric. But you will not lack for money, Egil. I will compensate you for your ship and give you another that will provide you with an easy passage to Iceland. Asgard, Egil's wife, had stayed at Arnbjorn's house while they were at the assembly. Arnbjorn gave Egil a very seaworthy ship and had it loaded with timber. Egil prepared the ship to put out to sea and had almost 30 men with him again. He and Arnbjorn parted in great friendship, and Egil spoke a verse. Let the gods banish the king, pay him for stealing my wealth. Let him incur the wrath of Odin and the gods. Make the tyrant flee his lands, Frey and Njord. May Thor and the land god be angered at this foe, this defiler of his holy place. Tack skal du ha det.